Hello and welcome to my channel. This is the weapons rack from the Heroquest board game, and as you can see on it is the enemy shield, which I'm going to have a go at making full size out of foam. So I've raided my box of foam pieces and found some old floor mats which will be perfect for this challenge. Some bigger ones would have been better, but these will do just fine. I just need to get rid of all these interconnecting pieces, they're not a lot of use. And then I have to turn this square into a circle. And without any professional equipment at hand, I'll show you how I do that. So first of all I draw across, which goes through the dead centre. And from there I draw a straight line from the centre to each corner. Now this line is longer than the other one. So I take the shortest measurement and mark up on the longest lines, like so. So all I need to do now is draw a gentle curve between each of these points and I'll end up with a full circle. This doesn't have to be perfectly round, it just needs to be somewhere near. And then using a sharp blade I cut it out. This doesn't have to be very neat because I'm going to whip the Dremel out and use that to smooth off the edges. And then using a marker I draw on where the wood grain is going to go. And once again this doesn't have to be perfectly neat because the shield is supposed to be handmade by the Dark Forces. And to differentiate between different planks of wood I cut out a V shape. And this leaves me with a large groove. But when it comes to the cracks I just use single cuts. And I try to make those as random as possible. Using a heat gun is a great way to expand those cuts, as it shrinks the foam a little bit and gives you more definition. But you have to be careful because it can warp or distort the foam. The other side of the shield has a pattern to it which we don't want. So we need to cover that up with a sheet of foam. And the easiest way to take measurements is to draw around it. And then it's just a matter of gluing them both together. And for that I'm using contact cement. And for this you have to coat both sides, allow it to dry, and then when you touch them together you get an instant bond. The only problem is you have to make sure your aim is on point, which is why I've not yet cut out the other circle, as it gives me a little bit of wiggle room. I just need to push it down along the edges, make sure it's got a good fit. And now that's on, I just need to cut it out. Cutting out like this isn't going to be perfectly neat. So I once again dig out the Dremel and round it all off. I need to line up the planks on the front and the back, so I'll just mark them out. Then I can reproduce the planks on the inside of the shield. They can come out wonky, just as long as they meet the marks at the top and bottom. Since this is the back side of the shield, it doesn't need quite as much detail, so I'll use single cuts. And once again the heat gun will widen those out a bit. This shield has an emblem on the front of it, so I need to sketch one out. And this is also the same design which is on the dice for the game. And once the design is done, I'll go over the edges with a darker pen. In my mind, these are steel pieces which have been hammered into the shield, which will help reinforce it. As with any symmetrical design, the best way to increase accuracy is to fold it in half and then cut it out. And then you'll be left with a set of templates like this. And now I need a thin sheet of foam to transfer the pattern onto. All this drawing does get a little bit tedious, but believe me, it's worth it in the end. And once again, you have to make sure your blade is perfectly sharp before you do this process. Otherwise the blade will snag and tear the foam. And then you have to draw out another template. I then dry fit the pieces to make sure they all fit. And then I need to draw around them one more time. And this is going to help us when it comes to gluing down the pieces. I have this old tube of contact cement which needs using up. You can tell it's old because it's starting to get a bit gooey. But I figured it would be good enough for this job. And naturally this is a two-part process, so I need to do exactly the same of where they're going to stick on the shield. And once both parts have dried, I can start sticking them on. A couple of the pieces do end up going on a little bit wonky, but in my eyes that just adds to the authenticity of the build. After all, orcs and goblins don't have the finest crafting skills. This is a bit of a slow process, so it's best to take your time, as it's not worth making any major mistakes at this stage. And that's his beautiful smile put on. Just need to put on the last eye and this part of the project is done. I just need to cut out some more thick foam pieces for the edging trim, which is the metal band which wraps around the shield. And since I don't have a piece of foam long enough, I have to stick several pieces together. And once again I use my old out of date glue. I bevel all the edges with the Dremel. And then I also use the Dremel to remove the pattern on the underside. First of all I test fit it to make sure I got the measurements right. And you're already familiar with the process. Contact adhesive is applied to both surfaces and then left to dry. And because I had a large area to cover, I used the good stuff. I have the shield body resting on a slightly raised surface, so that when I apply the trim, it will stick out on both sides. So it's just a matter of taking my time and make sure I'm accurate. Contact adhesive can make your foam swell up and expand slightly, so just have to take care when making the ends meet. This cap belongs to some dried up super glue I have, and using a blade I'm sharpening the interior, so that way when I drill down into a piece of foam I create some rivets. And once they've been cut out, I can apply them to the shield. I place 8 of them on the front and evenly space them out, and I need to make 16 more when I'm going to the back. And using some thin foam, I cut out a couple of strips to use as straps. This will be to place your arm through so you can wear the shield. This prop is going to be for decoration only, so these arm straps don't need to be functional or hard wearing. So strip them both into place, making sure one of them is slightly bigger than the other, because one is for your forearm and one is for your hand. You may have noticed that this shield is slightly on the small side. This is because I didn't have enough material to make a bigger one. So therefore it's designed to be used by a goblin rather than an orc. And now I stick on the remaining rivets which hold the straps in place. and by now I've lost all feeling in my fingers after all that drilling by hand. This is quite a laborious process, but it adds so much to the finished prop. And the last step before painting is to give the whole thing a blast with a heat gun, and this helps to seal up the pores so the paint doesn't soak in. Plus it also makes the foam a little bit more rigid. Painting time. I'm just using straightforward acrylic paint for this. It will need at least 2 coats to give good coverage. And you can see here the difference the second coat makes. The underneath colour barely shows through now. And once that's dried, I repeat the same process for the rear of the shield, before returning my attention to the front. For the wood colour, I'm using a liquid brown shoe polish. This basically stains the foam and it's quite effective. As you can see now, it's starting to look like a wooden shield. And I continue to do the same on the back. When it came to the leather straps, I used a dark brown. I wanted to make sure they didn't clash with the wood colour. When it came to painting the metal plates at the front of the shield, I had to first paint all the edges before I could move on to the front of the plates. It was hard to get a uniform coverage and the paint came out streaky, but this was necessary for the base layer, as I intend to go over the whole thing with this graphite powder. First I brushed it over the metal pieces, and then using a tissue I basically gave it a polish, and this gave me a nice even coverage. Because it has a powder coating, this side needs sealing before I can do the reverse, and I use a matte spray for that. I repeat the same process on the back, first by painting on the metal parts, followed by rubbing on the graphite, and then sealing it all in with the matte sealer. And that is my Heroquest shield completed. As I said before, it's a little bit too small for an orc, but it's perfect size for a goblin. I don't think it looks too bad for a piece of foam. It looks authentic enough for a display piece. I do have a bunch of other props that I've made from the Heroquest game. Just click on the link at the end and you can view those videos. Thank you for watching. Don't forget, if I can do it, so can you.